Darkcast Network. Indie pods with a dark side.
Is Mothman really a supernatural force predicting impending doom? Did Apollo 11 really land on the moon? Did you find out if that was a cult living just 2 doors down that you waved to every single day when you got your mail? If these are things that you ponder when you should be sleeping, then I would like to welcome you to Creepy Confidential. I'm your host, Noelle, your resident weirdo Wisconsinite. I open case files on my favorite cryptids, cults, conspiracies, and other worldly creepy, bringing you new cases, live broadcasts, and local lore. Some stories have been lost with time. Others are perhaps still happening today in your local communities, right under your very creepy noses. So get ready, creeps. It's Creepy Confidential.
Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way.
Mountain Murders is an Appalachian true crime podcast. Some content may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey, y'all. Welcome
say
back to
fuck a
Mountain
lot.
Murders. I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
Hey, you.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm doing great.
Hanging in there, having a good weekend?
It's been an incredible weekend.
Getting ready to start a brand new week. Can you believe we're already into the month of August? Summer has just whizzed on by.
No, it's out of control.
Like a flash of lightning. I feel like I haven't really accomplished anything this summer. I mean, we haven't really gone on a vacation. I don't know.
It's almost like we're barely making it.
Well, a lot of people are in the struggle with us, Dylan. We are not alone.
Yeah, I know, but it's been a wild summer nonetheless.
I know. I feel like I haven't done any of the typical things I would do in the summer. I haven't been camping, haven't really gone on a vacation. I haven't even been kayaking.
Yeah. What?
I haven't even gotten my boat or my paddleboard on the water this summer. Like, I don't even know where time has gone.
What kind of world do we live in when you can't even have a chance to kayak?
And now we're heading into fall, and I'm starting a new job, so I've been doing a little bit of training, and that's going to eat up a lot of my time. So, yeah.
So
Summer is drawing near, right? The end is near. And then I'm going to go straight into, I'm training for a new job. I'm going to start a new job and have no time to go do any of the things I just mentioned.
Oh my God, you sound like a kid talking about going back to school after the summer's over.
That's how I feel.
Oh my gosh.
Like, I feel like my whole summer's just been taking care of Rufus, watering plants, and doing housework.
Yeah.
And taking my son, to do little things like the swimming pool or something.
Well, I don't know why time had sped up, but it seems like it's flying by, right? You look up
believe
and
that the kids are going back to school.
Boom.
I know the other day I was in one of the big box stores and saw parents and kids scurrying. They had their lists to get all the back to school supplies.
Yeah.
And I was like, where did time go? It was just June.
I say it's time inflation. You get less of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Something's just sucking time away from us.
Oh my God, did I just create something new?
Maybe. Did you?
Is that a new term that people are going to trace back 100 years from now when
Dylan
society
coined
pivoted?
A new term?
When society literally pivoted on my phrase I just made? Oh my gosh, I'm counting on
summer,
the
I don't know, y'all. It's been hot as hell where we are, where we've dropped in, and also there's a hurricane a-blowing.
It's a hurricane.
So I know folks up and down the East Coast are concerned about that. I was on a Zoom call earlier, and some folks were in Florida that were on the Zoom call.
Oh.
And saying that they were already starting to see the weather hit.
Ah.
Like someone was in Winter Haven, and she was like, dude, if I get kicked off this call, it's because, It's
house is
raining like
underwater.
hell and storming here, and I don't know how much time I have before the internet goes out.
You know that those sounds, a hurricane sounds very scary. I've never been through one, but I know a bad thunderstorm scares me, and if I even see like 10 or 15, 20 mile an hour winds or maybe gusting up to 30 or 35, I'm like, oh God, the world's ending. Now, could you imagine being on times 50 of that?
Yeah, I've never been in a hurricane. I have driven through a tornado, which I've shared with you guys, but never a hurricane. Just that, the velocity and that kind of storm's capacity is very frightening. So for those who are listening in Florida, Georgia, Alabama, kind of all along that area.
I hope you got some beans.
Hope you guys are doing well. Stay safe.
Yeah.
We love you guys.
Yeah, on a serious note, we hope everyone stays safe and that you're able to continue listening to our podcast. That's not a selfish reason for you to make it, but we hope
in case you're bored.
Yeah.
You need something to do.
Yeah, but
otherwise we hope you're riding the storm out.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
I would have a hurricane party.
You would?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Years ago, and I've talked about this before, I was an au pair. I was a nanny, a live-in nanny. And the family that I worked for were originally from, the wife was from Louisiana and the husband was from Texas. But the wife spent a lot of time in the Houston area in Texas, as a young adult and into her adulthood. And she would talk about having a hurricane party.
Yeah.
And just how fun it was.
Sheltering in
and when she
place.
lived in Louisiana, she's like, oh yeah, girl, we would just have a big old, because I guess before she had married the guy, her second husband, she had been married to a pilot and they lived in New Orleans. And she was like, oh yeah, girl, we just hunkered down and threw down.
So, it's good, safety in numbers, right? But then if it truly goes sideways, 2/3 of your party is going to be freaking lit.
That's why I'm happy to have that kayak.
People just drunk, but be like, I floated good when I was drunk. I made it.
Exactly.
I ended up in the Bahamas. I stayed there a week.
Well, hey, that's how that might be the only way I get a vacation this year.
Yeah, I float good when I'm drunk. I don't know, it's a natural skill.
Hey, before we get started, enough with our hurricane party, Dylan. Let's give a shout out to our newest patrons. We have Brenda and Karen.
Brenda and Karen,
thank you for joining us at patreon.com/Mountain Murders Podcast. We have bonus content there, ad-free episodes. You get an invite to our Discord chat, and we have a lot of fun.
We do, and join us.
Yeah, we've been kind of covering over the past, months or so, what we call the FBI's Most Wanted Files.
Yeah.
A little bit of a series. We have brand new FBI Files episode that's going to be coming out soon. We've been putting together our Urban Legend series over there. We'll be dropping one of those again. So in addition to some of the true crime stories we cover, we recently discussed the barbecue murders.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of bonus content over there. I mean, hey, we've been doing this for almost 6 years. So
see, that's the thing about
you're going to get a lot of episodes. Dylan, do you know we're on like episode 470 now?
I just stopped counting because we're on episode infinity.
Dude,
because
we'll have
we're
to
never
do
going to
something
stop,
special
folks.
when we get to like episode 500.
500 is actually a very huge benchmark in the podcast world.
It is. I can't believe it's been almost 6 years.
And I'm amazed.
For that little project, that little thing we do.
I'm amazed.
Oh, how cute. We have a little podcast.
We're blown. We love the reactions from the public at large about, it's a little podcast. It's an actual job, and we love it.
We put forth a lot of work.
Heather puts forth a lot of work,
to get this content out to you guys.
I have to come out of the bedroom, okay?
Well.
And sit down in here.
I had to drag him out of bed today.
Now that's making it sound like I always lay in bed.
Now, Dylan.
I never, unless I'm worn out from working my really manly job. Yeah, I feel strong.
Oh, now you're assigning gender to your job?
Yeah, I am. I did just now. But
it's true. I wouldn't want to do your job. Look, I'm just going to be honest. As a lady woman,
see there,
I don't want to do your job.
Then we don't
I don't want to work that hard. I don't want to do physical, manual shit. I don't want to move stuff.
And that's
I don't want to lift stuff.
See?
I don't want to be out in the heat sweating. I don't want to do any of that.
Of course, I don't intend to offend anyone. I'm just carrying on. But me, I identify as a man. And I feel like it's a manly job when you go beat the earth into your submission.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
Yeah.
That's what I do here, Dylan.
All right.
Okay.
You don't know where I was. Yeah, that's great. Let's just leave that in.
Right in the storm out.
Just leave that
Dylan,
in.
are you ready to get into today's true crime case?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So this story actually takes place a little bit from your neck of the woods, Dylan, where you was homegrown, at least for some of your life.
Could you imagine fields of Dylan? Just be like, oh, Dylan crop's looking pretty crazy
What
this
do
year.
you, instead of watering them, you just spray a little beer?
And industrial chemicals help me grow
little bit
too.
of Modelo.
Yeah, and some very,
Sprinkle a little bit of like pizza dust for the crops to grow.
and some biocides, very strong ones that make your eyes run and your
Ash
nose
on the
snot.
plants, on the Dylan plants.
Yes.
It's just like a beautiful like sunflower, but your face.
Okay. No, see, I was wondering what the Dylan crop would look like, and now we know, and everyone can't unsee that.
I'm gonna have to make a Dylan crop.
Okay, you can make a meme.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna get to work on that.
Okay,
Are you ready, Dylan?
let's get it.
Let's get into it. Faye Wilson was born on October 2nd, 1904 to parents John and Nancy. She had 3 older siblings, Harris, Blanche, and Lulu. After Faye's birth came the youngest daughter in the family, Ruth. The Wilsons owned a farm in York County, South Carolina, which is, like upstate South Carolina.
Right.
In 1910, John Wilson, along with his family, which also included his elderly mother, they relocated to Shelby, North Carolina.
Well, I've heard of that.
Now, that's where you're born and raised.
Well,
no, you were born in Atlanta.
Yeah, I was born in Hotlanta.
Oh, yeah.
That's where they got the name from when I was born there.
Because of, yeah,
Because
it's true.
Dylan was born there.
Because you were like a hot baby.
When I spit hot fire. So there's that. Damn.
Walking around in your little like high cup diaper.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Showing
showing some leg.
what's up, bitch.
Anywho, but you lived in Shelby. Your family's from Shelby, like your mom's
Yes.
family. I mean, they're kind of like a prominent family from Shelby in years past, and we're deeply rooted in that Cleveland County history, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I have nothing to hide. It's the Rays, and anyone from the area would know
It's
of the
WRAY.
Yeah, know of the Rays family and their department store, and multiple other ventures over the years in the area. They were
Your grandpa was like an assistant insurance commissioner or something, right?
under Governor Jim Hunt. Yeah, I know. I should have some stocks or something, but I ain't got shit.
You just got your damn name.
I've been running from this name all my life.
Look, my family has over 200 something years in Haywood County, North Carolina, like literally the first white settler. And don't call me a colonizer because I got some damn Cherokee in my family too. No, I'm not a Cherokee princess.
They settled. They made friends with them Cherokees.
But actually, my first white settler into Haywood, his wife was a full-blood Cherokee.
That's because he was one of the first white men in the area, and he went and like chilled with the Cherokee.
Yeah, I mean, there's like history books about it.
Yeah.
So you'd think all the land and farm, and there's like in Western North Carolina several Hyatt Creeks and communities named after my relatives. You would think I would have something, but I ain't got shit, dude.
So your people own literally thousands of acres of premium land.
I just got my name.
That is going now for $250,000 an acre lot or whatever. They had thousands of acres of
farmland. So yeah.
Okay.
And now I ain't got shit.
And you ain't got shit.
I ain't got shit. So
Anyway,
I feel you, bud.
If you're from the area, you would know of the Rays. We'll
Yeah. So Shelby, North Carolina, it's about what, like an hour, 45 minutes outside of Charlotte.
Yeah. Hour and a half.
Yeah. It's
like that.
kind of in the beginning of what would be the Piedmont region of North Carolina.
Yeah, it's really
it's where the flatland begins.
It's where you truly get out of the mountains and the rolling hills and the foothills of the mountains, and it starts flattening out.
Well, Shelby was only a distance of about 30 miles from Sharon in York County, and Sharon is where the Wilsons had a farm. Mr. Wilson actually took the job of county tax collector in Cleveland County, and that's why his family relocated to Shelby. So being a tax collector, I mean, that's a pretty good job.
Yeah.
You're a well-respected member of the community.
Yeah, and you actually have a pulse, a read on your community as far as to how it's doing economically and such, right? I mean, there's a lot of information comes to the tax office.
Yeah, and fun fact, out of the 100 counties in North Carolina, Haywood County, where born and raised, where Dylan and I lived before, is the only county in the state that elects a tax collector still.
Yeah, all the rest of them are appointed
which
positions.
I think is a very antiquated and an outdated notion, because boy, have we ended up with some doozies in that office.
Now, in that small county, kind of rural-based county, we saw some very interesting things happen in local politics. We saw a nobody, a complete nobody in our region, a young kid who was just a goober, get voted into Congress.
Oh, yeah.
Congress of the state.
Are you talking about Madison Cawthorn?
Yes. And we also saw more than once with the tax collector, totally inept.
There's a current tax collector right now who's very young, very, very young, inexperienced.
No
but
experience.
For some reason was elected. And the guy before that was a total goober who had a lot of issues because he didn't, but they couldn't really get rid of him because he was elected.
See, here's the thing with the
So he just took advantage of the office, didn't go to work. They had issues with him actually doing the job. I mean, there have been calls to get rid of that elected position and make it like every other position where it's a hired and there's accountability. But so far, for whatever reason, the county has not gone on with that.
Well, it makes sense because the tax collector, who doesn't get mad about paying taxes, and you're like, I'll just vote you out, you son of a bitch. And even if he is, more than qualified to do the job. It's very weird.
It's really strange. But anyway, John Wilson, he became the tax collector. Now in Shelby, Faye Wilson met Rafe King. King hailed from a prominent Shelby family, deeply rooted, a lot of ties, well-respected family. Rafe happened to be 12 years older than Faye. This is a pretty big age difference. If you're like in your early 20s and you're marrying someone who's practically in their mid-30s, that's a big generational gap, gap.
I think that's the thing with the age gaps. Is if it literally is a generational gap, then it can cause issues. You know what I mean?
Well, both were considered attractive and popular in the small town, and a lot of folks considered them to be a good match because they both were well-liked, had a lot of friends.
So two popular kids got together.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rafe worked in the automobile business. I don't know why my brain's leaving out letters today. But Rafe worked in the automobile business. I'm not sure what that meant. I tried to dive into it. I think he did sales. I think he was selling cars. And this is the early 20s, so selling probably those like Model Ts.
Well, sales was huge. It was a huge, there was so many people and so many different types of sales. The door-to-door salesman was a very efficient way to get a new product in front of people because, there wasn't a whole lot of advertisements. So, yeah.
Catalogs were big, yeah. They didn't have maybe all the storefronts that we have now, the brick and mortar.
Not at all. Someone would own a damn factory
Internet.
Making the product, and they would literally,
fill your trunk with a product
like
shoes and send you out on the road
a traveling
to go
salesman.
Sell those shoes. So yeah, he worked in the auto business. I'm assuming he was a salesman. And Faye was a teacher. Now I tried to find some information about where she might have went to teaching college or that kind of thing, but I wasn't able to get all the details. This is an old case, so a lot of newspaper articles I'm relying upon here. Now, after a courtship, the couple married on Thanksgiving of 1927. Faye was, I believe, 21 at the time. So he would have been like 34.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Now, the couple moved to Sharon, South Carolina, which was Faye's hometown, and Rafe purchased a farm from Faye's mother, Mrs. Wilson. Mrs. Wilson passed away shortly after. While Rafe was farming, Faye took a job teaching French at Sharon High School. And it seemed like she only taught a few classes, so she wasn't like a full-time teacher. And I'm not really sure, again, how that worked, but it would talk about she had like a noon class, so she didn't go in. So it sounds like maybe she was like a part-time.
Or like an assistant of sorts.
A part-time teacher. The Kings attended the Associated Reformed Presbyterian Church, where Faye sang in the choir, and they were both fairly active in the church community. On Friday morning, which was January 25th of 1929, Rafe King wasn't feeling well. His wife, Faye, gave him some sleeping pills around mid-morning, then headed out to get milk from a neighbor before teaching a French class at noon. Around 3 p.m., Rafe King called out to a young boy who happened to be passing by on the street and asked if the boy would fetch Dr. C.O. Burris. Rafe complained of being unable to sleep. So Dr. Burris made a house call. Can you imagine just calling out to some random kid on the sidewalk, hey, go get the doctor?
Yeah, well, that's how it worked. I've always wanted to hang my head out and throw some coins at a random boy on the street and tell him to go buy the biggest goose in the city.
I've
You know
never
what I
had a
mean?
goose.
Like, or whatever happened in
Yeah, just go get me some poultry.
Be like, will you go down there to the Bilos and
Get me some fried chicken.
see if they got any of them fried chickens?
I need a rotisserie. Yeah. So Rafe complained of being unable to sleep, and Dr. Burris said everything appeared to be normal. Rafe wasn't. He couldn't really assess that Rafe was sick. Like, he didn't seem to have a flu or anything like that. So he just gave King a dose of laudanum, also known as whole opium, for sleep.
Yeah, I can't find nothing wrong with him. I'm going to give him a big shot of opium. He's going to sleep for about 2 days, and we'll check on him later, okay? He's going to be high now, so he's probably going to want some munchies later, too.
I don't know. On opium, I think he just knocked.
I don't know
he just
what.
knocked out, bud.
It was in so many products back in the day, and a lot, medicinal ointments and salves and tinctures.
Salves? You mean salves?
Those two. And tinctures.
I love that word, tinctures.
Tinctures. Isn't it
fun.
It's fun.
Yeah, I feel like the Tinkerbell's flying around,
Yes.
just giving you like a little dose of something.
It's a happy word.
Like a little happy dust. When late afternoon came around, Rafe still wasn't sleeping, so he went to his neighbor's home, explaining that Faye had not returned from school yet and that he had been having like insomnia issue. Rafe said he was too sick to search for Faye.
Okay.
Now, the doctor hasn't found that he's sick, but Ray is saying, I'm too sick right now.
What are you going to do?
I'm sick because I can't sleep.
I'm sick because I can't sleep.
Well, the woman of the house agreed to go look for Faye while Rafe stayed behind with her husband. And I believe these neighbors were the Fergusons, just based on some, interviews and that kind of thing. Now, despite having taken the opium dose earlier, Rafe headed for the home of a minister named Reverend Macaulay. And since Rafe was feeling ill, the minister recommended, I should just take you home and put you to bed if you're not feeling well. So he's not feeling well, but he feels well enough to go to the neighbor's house and to go over to this minister's house.
Yeah, and you can't help do something serious, right?
Right. I can't look for my wife, but I can come hang out with you guys and tell you that I'm sick.
But then why'd you even come over? What are you even doing right now? If you're sick, you should be at the house.
Well, it's almost like he's maybe establishing an alibi. So let's get into our story further, Dylan. The minister, seeing that Faye was still not home from school, telephoned to Charlotte, North Carolina, where Faye's sister Blanche lived. She had not spoken to Faye. So she tells the minister, I haven't spoken to my sister. I don't know where she is.
Okay.
She's not here.
So
She had no plans to visit me. I'm not sure where she is. Faye's parents had passed away, so there was no chance she could be like visiting her parents. It was at this time Rafe King told Reverend Macaulay he was concerned that Faye might have taken her own life.
Oh, I just thought about this. She may have killed herself.
This was inconceivable to Reverend Macaulay and later Faye's friends and family, because she was not a lady who exhibited any kind of depression, any kind of mental illness. This kind of hit them out of the blue.
Yeah, and a lot of people might think that's a knee-jerk reaction usually by friends and family, but a lot of times after the fact, friends and family would be like, I remember this one
There
night.
were some signs.
They were kind of sad and they didn't snap out of it, and we all went out, all the friends went out and they decided to just go home. It was kind of out of character for them.
Right.
You'll usually think of things. And when
not
there's none of those
right.
afterthoughts or, after you process it, it makes you think, hey, they were not sad.
Well, that's
no
not
reason.
to say that people who are struggling or who decide to go that route don't make a split moment decision,
right,
and just do this act. But I think a lot of times there are signs leading up to it.
Telltale signs.
So people would be very shocked if a seemingly well-adjusted, happy person who's living their life and just doing great suddenly decided to do this.
Right.
Right? Word had spread that Faye King had not returned home from her teaching job at Sharon High School, so others joined in the search for her. people around the neighborhood. The pastor from the King's Church, the Reverend E.B. Hunter, arrived at the King's house. When he arrived, it was about the same time that the Sheriff Quinn made his way to the house as well. Rafe told them both that he'd been very sick all day, so sick, in fact, that he'd been unable to keep the fireplace going.
So he's been
because this is January, it's very cold, and this is this is an old house. It doesn't have central air, not hair.
Hair.
It doesn't have any heat and air. I'm likely there's no hair on the walls.
I know what this house is like to keep warm.
It's cold.
It's cold like that big ass house we used to live in.
Yeah.
They had 2 open face fireplaces.
Not great insulation.
The heat went straight up the chimney, did not get projected out into the room. I mean, you had to huddle in front of the fire to feel any warmth. It's very, very hard to keep warm. But he's so sick. He tells everyone, he opens up, I'm so sick today that I couldn't even, I can't do anything. But I can go around visiting people and telling them how sick I am.
But I'm unable to keep the fireplace
I couldn't
going.
even keep the fireplace going.
Yeah. He couldn't stoke his fire. He had stayed in bed all day inside the cold house. That's the story he's telling. Now, Reverend Hunter, for some reason, starts observing some inconsistencies in Rafe's stories, just little details that aren't quite adding up for him.
And this is what a reverend thinks, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, the reverend, who was fond of chewing tobacco products, spat in the fireplace, and it sizzled despite Rafe's claims that there had been no fire all day.
Oh, well, wow. Damn, this reverend, he's observant.
When the Reverend bent down to touch the bricks inside the fireplace, they were warm. Odd, he thought. Reverend Hunter then began poking around the house. In the kitchen, he noted there were damp spots on the floor, as if someone had recently spot cleaned with a lot of water.
Oh, okay.
However, he kind of kept these suspicious details under wraps. At the time, he didn't share them. He just
made note of it.
Was kind of watching out for some things that didn't quite make sense. The neighbors continued searching for Faye King even after darkness settled in. The next door neighbor, Mrs. Ferguson, had seen the small smokehouse, which was in the backyard. That door was ajar when it was usually wide open. So it's as if someone had closed it, but just left it slightly. It wasn't all the way closed.
Okay.
And she was like, that door's always open.
So somebody's closed it recently, basically.
Suggesting that they take a peek inside the smokehouse, the group made a grim find. 23-year-old Faye was found lying on a pile of walnuts inside the smokehouse. A bottle of Nemopin was just by the woman's fingertips. Now, Nemopin, Dylan, is this a product you've ever heard of?
No, I've actually never heard of this one.
Me either, so I looked into it, and I think it's because it's no longer around. So Nemopin was used as a household cleaner, but it also advertised as a treatment for chicken sorehead.
What?
Have you ever heard of chicken sorehead?
Wait, they're saying it's good enough to clean the floor and sanitize it, essentially. And they're telling you to drink it as well?
No, it's for chicken sorehead.
Oh, for literal chicken sorehead.
Yes. Chicken sorehead is not a human disease, Dylan.
I was like, I didn't call it.
It's a deadly pox that affected young chicks.
Oh, okay.
Little do you know about chicken sorehead, I can see here.
Okay.
So it's like an agricultural or like a farm product, right? Like something that you would use if you had chickens around. And Rafe was a farmer, so it wouldn't be surprising that he might have Nemopin for chicken sorehead, or that they might have it in the house as a cleaning product.
Okay.
Right?
So is it you would sanitize the area where you keep chickens to keep them from getting chicken sorehead? Or do you apply directly to the sorehead on the chicken?
I didn't dive.
See,
I don't know, Dylan.
This is
I
my
didn't.
brain,
One, I
folks.
wasn't around in the 1920s, and I didn't dive in deep enough to tell you. I can't tell you.
All right, let's move on. But this is how the brain I live inside, folks. I would literally think about that.
I think it's a
for
medication that you would administer to the chickens.
45 minutes. I would think about that. and
So
couldn't do
maybe
anything
after you
else.
scrubbed your floor
Yeah.
or your counter, you might then go just administer a dose to the chickens.
Oh, okay.
Now,
Okay, sorry.
Nabopin was distributed by Macmillan Drug Company, which is located or was located in Columbia, South Carolina. In 1939, the USDA found the company was fraudulently advertising the curative powers. It contained a form of arsenic, but did not treat chicken sorehead.
What the hell? You know, there's so much of this back in the day.
Miracle elixirs.
Just all these root oils and these
Snake oils. Medicines.
Yeah. And they had no oversight. You know, they could put whatever they wanted in them. And I know that sometimes people might think the FDA and EPA and all that is kind of ridiculous and goes way too far. But think about when they didn't exist at all. What big business did to the public.
Here, take this cocaine. You're going to feel a lot better.
Well, you know, I honestly think they should put that back in the Coca-Cola because they're charging so much for it. Be like, well, you know, it's got cocaine. Oh, okay, that's why it's 2 liters, $6. Jesus.
Yeah, you know, we've gone through periods where we don't drink soda, and then we will get on the soda, and then we're like, oh, we have to stop this.
Dude, it's like a drug.
Bad. It is.
But we're like, we got to get off soda this week.
So the other day I was in the market, and a 12-pack of soda is $9.
It's crazy.
I remember when you could get a 12-pack for like $2.98.
I remember the sale would be 2 for $5.
Yeah.
You get 2 12-packs for $5
and
or
now
$6,
it's
$7.
$9 for one pack, 12-pack.
Yes.
It's like they don't even want us to have junk food anymore.
No, but people still buy it.
Yeah,
I know, but people still, it's almost like they're using your sugar addiction against you.
Well, I've quit buying that. I quit buying stuff because I'm like, I'm not paying $8 for a bag of Doritos.
I have a ceiling.
Which was something that, you know, like, hey, my son might want this with a sandwich or something, but I'm not doing it. So thank you, inflation. You've actually pushed us to eat healthier and to make healthier selections.
If you say now that it's more expensive to eat healthy than it is to not eat healthy, you're lying.
You're lazy.
You're lying, and you don't want to do any food prep, which is fine, but just quit lying.
Because I bought a bag of mini cucumbers for $1.98, and I cut those up and just eat them with salt. My son likes to eat cucumbers.
Right.
I'll put sesame seed, like sesame oil and soy sauce on them and little sesame seeds and have that as a snack. And so I can buy a bag of cucumbers for $2, or I can get a bag of Doritos for $8.
Yeah.
So it's just making healthy choices.
Yeah, well, they've processed out.
So while searching the king's home, a bottle of Lysol was also found in a storage room near the back porch. This was called a plunder room in some of the articles I read. I've never heard of a plunder room.
Sounds to me like
maybe a mud room.
A mud room, a catch-all.
Yeah.
You know, a little room adjacent to the...
A laundry room.
Yeah. Just it's going to catch everything.
Yeah. So, and then other people kind of called it a storage room.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Crazy people.
So, anyway, the storage room, they find this bottle of Lysol. Now, this is not like the same kind of Lysol that we have today. This was a much stronger...
This was an industrial solvent.
It totally was. It was formulated with a type of carbolic acid that was very corrosive to human tissue.
Damn.
Now, Rafe's claims immediately were that Faye had been threatening to harm herself. Now, he's already oiled the greased the wheels for this, right? He's already made just random comment to this reverend. I'm worried she's hurt herself.
Did you find her? Did she hurt herself?
Yeah. So he starts telling people, well, I was really worried this was going to happen. Now, the doctor who arrived at the scene assumed the woman had ingested the poison, the Nabopin, because it was found by her hand. Yet, a closer examination revealed that Faye had a head wound. So we'll talk more about that in a little bit. So they see that she has a little bit of a head wound. There's also some blood found on her dress and shoes, which would be inconsistent with poisoning.
With ingesting something that doesn't make sense unless you're vomiting blood, maybe.
There were also some acid burns on the woman's lips, indicating that possibly she had some poison. However, it was kind of weird because she had a little bit of blood on her dress and shoes, but there was no blood in the smokehouse. So it appeared that she had been moved to the smokehouse from another location.
She must have moved herself.
Yeah.
After she self-harmed.
That's what Rafe said.
Okay.
Yeah. Or that was kind of his line of thinking, is somehow she moved herself in there.
Well, I got to say, these people looking into this, Reverend included, are very observant, and they're doing a really good job.
Well, it was noted by many in attendance from the search to the doctor that arrives, the sheriff, the minister that's on hand, that Rafe's stories seem to be ever changing. Now, to bolster the suicide theory, and since no one else believed that Faye had self-harmed, Rafe tells law enforcement that Faye had killed herself due to a venereal disease.
Oh, okay. So now he's going to slander her character as well.
Yes, now that she's dead. He told the doctor, the sheriff, anyone who would listen, that Faye had contracted syphilis before they had been married. And because of the STD, Faye had lost her teaching job in Shelby. But that wasn't true. Rafe had actually been diagnosed with syphilis prior to his marriage to Faye and had been treated for the condition by medical professionals, including Dr. Burris, who has arrived on the scene by now to examine Faye.
Shut up. Really?
Yes.
So he's telling this lie to a person who knows damn well that at the very least he had syphilis before they got
you've had
together.
this for years and years.
Right.
Yeah. When this version of the story kind of didn't work, because the doctor's saying, well, actually, Rafe, I know that you had syphilis, that you've admitted to having syphilis for years, years before you were married.
Remember?
So that's starting to kind of cloud Rafe's story. So that's when he tells the sheriff that Faye had been pregnant and that his wife was terrified by the idea of going through childbirth and had instead decided to kill herself.
Because that's very common.
But we will find out this isn't true. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. So not only does she have an STD, but she's pregnant. Rafe also told people that he had heard a dog barking all day. So someone had been lurking outside the king's residence and that the sheriff should try to find that person.
Oh, so now there's another person.
Possibly.
It's a self-harm assistant that she had ordered?
Possibly.
And they're there to serve you.
Yes.
Okay.
The first autopsy was performed by Dr. Burris, the local physician who had never done this procedure before. So this was his very first autopsy, and he will later admit he really didn't know what he was doing. While searching inside the home, law enforcement finds blood on a union suit. Now, Dylan, do you know what a union suit is?
Oh, that is like a one-piece.
Like the
long john.
Like people would call it long underwear, long johns.
Right.
It's the one piece. Sometimes it's red.
Yeah,
I think
often it's
kind
red.
of that caricature version. It's red and has like a little trap door in the back.
Yeah, it has a little slit with buttons in the modern day version, so you can do your business without pulling the whole thing off.
Well, they find this pair of long underwear, this union suit, stuffed in a trunk of otherwise clean clothing. There was blood stains that they could see on the kitchen door between the kitchen and the dining room. There were also some streaks of blood leading to the back door and on the floor of the storage room by the porch, that plunder room. So now if she has taken her own life, Dylan, why would there be blood stains?
Well, and it's not just one drip over here by the sink or, something that could be explained away. It's in multiple locations all around the room, which there's been very few times in my life, even if I've cut myself in the kitchen or had a nosebleed or got hurt outside, that I had blood smears all over the room. Right? I mean, it seems like a lot.
Now, the sheriff is starting to theorize that there was an attack that had likely taken place in the kitchen. The sharp-eyed minister had noticed the damp spots on the floor as if someone had tried to clean up a crime scene. There was also no blood found in the smokehouse where Faye's body had been placed.
Damn, is his minister Telly Savalas?
It sounds like
and Kojak of this motherfucker. Damn.
Or maybe he just is using his eyes.
Maybe the Lord showed him.
He's like, I got these two good eyes, and I'm going to use them to look around.
This minister done seen everything.
Well, at this point, an inquest is scheduled for February 4th at the Sharon High School auditorium. Onlookers packed the building and stood on the grounds waiting to hear what was being discussed inside. I mean, this was like a main event in town.
Yeah. Oh, the
people are coming from far and wide to watch this inquest, to preview it.
The tongues are wagging.
Oh, yeah.
And the gossip mill is cranked up to full effect, the efficiency at 100, and people are talking.
Well, during the inquest, Rafe testified that he'd been sick in bed all day. After giving his testimony and hearing information about the bloodstains found inside the King home, this pair of, long underwear, the union suit with bloodstains, all that, Rafe approaches the sheriff, Sheriff Quinn, asking if they can speak privately while this inquest is still being held. Now, outside, Rafe's story shifts again. Rafe tells the sheriff he wasn't sure Faye had killed herself. He again told the story of the barking dog and how a prowler must have been outside. That person could have killed Faye inside the house and then moved her body out to the backyard.
Wait, so
all while Rafe is in bed.
Rafe has pulled the sheriff aside during this during these proceedings.
Yes.
To finally, all the little crumbs he's been dropping, he's like, they're not getting it. So he's going to tell him directly what his lie is, basically.
Rafe also complained to Sheriff Quinn that he wasn't getting a, quote, square deal.
Okay.
He told the sheriff that the King family, his own family, like his parents, his siblings, that they weren't allowing him to see any newspaper coverage of the case at all, which he didn't feel like was fair. The sheriff told him, quote, they are just trying to make sure you take care of yourself. Now, Rafe desperately wants people to know that he had nothing to do with his wife's death, and he just can't stop talking. So by now, he's got the sheriff outside. There's a crowd because there are folks like sitting out on the lawn, kind of milling about, if you will, milling about, kind of mulling over the information. There we go. That was what was popping in my brain, really. Out on the lawn because they can't fit in the auditorium. So by now, those people have started to make a circle, kind of gather around, trying to listen to what Rafe is telling the sheriff. And also, the prosecutor has joined them outside now. The solicitor, a man named Solicitor Glenn.
I'm not sure about the exact proceedings happening here, but this doesn't seem okay. I mean, this seems like you wouldn't want this to happen.
Well, the trouble was that Rafe told stories before any evidence had been presented, like at the scene of the, at the death scene.
Right.
All of that. And then after hearing what was discovered during the investigation, what was being told at the inquest, he had to change up the stories that he had already told.
So this is the first time he's hearing this stuff is during the inquest, as far as evidence and all that, and what witnesses are maybe saying?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
This discussion in the schoolyard, as I mentioned, it attracted a crowd who were eager to hear what he had to say. Some folks thought Rafe just didn't know when to shut up, and others suggested that Rafe was arrogant and thought he was smart enough to convince others to see his version of the truth. That this guy thinks he's so smart, he's going to manipulate all of us into believing his version of events, even though we've just heard evidence presented that there was blood found, all the things, right?
So he's literally surrounded by a group of people. Everyone's kind of shaking their head like this guy.
Yeah.
Like he really thinks we're going to believe this BS.
Well, either way, the sheriff and the prosecutor who were listening decided to take him to a more private location inside the school. When they found a quiet classroom, they sat him down, and Rafe insisted that they find this mysterious prowler who'd been around the neighborhood.
He ain't got but one arm. Yeah.
While they're having this conversation, Rafe's brother interrupts and insists they leave. He's like, Rafe, you need to come with me. As they're walking away, the sheriff and the prosecutor are leaving the classroom as well, kind of following behind. And they overhear Rafe's brother say, quote, you ought not talk to them. You have told too damn much already.
Well, and I think that's good advice. And maybe his brother's either worried about his, the well-being of his brother, Ray's well-being. Or he's like, just stop with the bullshit.
Just shut up.
Just shut up. Nobody believes you anyway.
The coroner's jury decided that Faye had died from poisoning, quote, administered by hands unknown to us. Now, when the verdict was announced, Rafe King was arrested. He was given a $3,000 bond, then released to his parents in Shelby, North Carolina, for safekeeping. Part of his bond is he has to stay with his parents.
So he's in their
sort of in their care.
In their custody.
Right.
Their care.
Yes, their custody, their care, whatever you want to call it.
Now you go put him in a room and shut the door.
Yeah.
And make him stay there.
You have to keep an eye on him. He can't be running off.
Can't run off.
Can't go live somewhere else. He has to be under your direct supervision.
Okay.
Right? Now, after Rafe had raised questions at the inquest, it was decided by the prosecutor that her body should be exhumed. Faye King's body should be resumed for a second autopsy. After all, Dr. Burris was not exactly knowledgeable in pathology, had never performed an autopsy before, and they felt maybe he didn't really know what he was looking for.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's when, as a professional, you say, hey, unless this is just like a natural causes case and this is going to be the first time I practice autopsy, maybe someone else should do this autopsy in the first place.
Well, the prosecution needed answers that a more detailed exam could provide. This more thorough exam proved that Faye was indeed not pregnant. Examiners sent the stomach and its contents to Clemson University, where it was examined by B.F. Robertson, chief chemist and a toxicology expert. Now, he determined that Faye had not been poisoned and that the chemical burns on the lips appeared to be staged to support a poisoning theory.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you could have also probably looked in her mouth, right? In her throat.
We'll get to that.
I mean, come on, dude.
We'll get to that. Okay, that's going to come up. Keep that in your little back brain, okay? The autopsy revealed that the tissue surrounding Faye's throat had damage. She had likely been strangled with a heavy cord.
Okay, so her thyroid muscle was broken, or is that right?
There appeared to be some ligature marks.
Yeah,
the hyoid is what you're talking about. Not the thyroid, baby. The hyoid.
The hyoid that got broke too.
They also found. Remember, there was a little bit of blood on her head. Well, they figured out that this bloody wound, that not only did she have the bloody wound on her forehead, but there was a wound partially hidden by hair, that the exam showed she likely had been hit with some kind of object, like a blunt force trauma, which would have knocked her unconscious before being strangled. And her hair had to be washed several times to reveal the deep nature of the wound.
Okay.
So it's hidden in the hair. Once they get to look, kind of get to looking at this wound, you love how professional, they get to looking at it.
Well, and she was found in a smokehouse on the ground with a bunch of small debris, walnut shells, all that. So it's probably all tangled up in her hair. It sounds like, yeah. So, okay, this makes sense to
I think they said they washed her hair 7 times to get the blood out of the back and to be able to see the wound.
So this was a significant head wound.
Yes, that maybe had not been caught before because of her hair.
But that was matted in blood. I mean.
And she had thick, dark black hair.
Come on, Doc.
So maybe they didn't see the blood in the hair, as if, if she were blonde, you'd probably see a lot of blood.
Well, yeah.
Whatever. But with dark hair, the blood's maybe masked a little bit more.
And she's dirty too. I mean, her body, unfortunately, was just tossed out in a trash heap.
Now, a woman named Mrs. Bankhead, who had gathered with a group of women at the King residence on the night that Faye was found, they had all showed up to help prepare her for burial. And this was common. You might have a wake at the house. Neighbor women, friends, church ladies might show up and help prepare the body for a funeral.
They were probably still using that board, where the porous board that you lay on.
Well,
and
yeah, but they would,
put an ice
they would come. They would wash the body.
Well, yeah.
They might.
People sat with their loved one.
Do the hair, the makeup. They would dress you. Well, Mrs. Bankhead wanted to iron a kimono belt for Faye. So it sounds like a bathrobe of some type, right? But the electric iron was not working at the time. The cord had been stretched from the electric iron really kind of far out to the point that it was causing an electrical problem. It wouldn't turn on when it was plugged in.
Yeah, and I'm sure it was probably noticeably longer than it had been.
Yes. Now, she ended up using a stovetop flat iron to iron this belt. After this information was learned, the sheriff and second autopsy, like the doctors performing it, believed that the iron cord was the murder weapon.
Well, I think that's a safe assumption, because that's a very strange thing. You know, most people would, if there was a problem in an iron, they would replace it. They wouldn't keep it in place as the functioning one. And yeah, it's weird.
Well, it was also believed that the iron could have possibly been used to hit her in the back of the head as well.
Well, there you go.
To cause this head injury, this blunt force trauma. Because if you think about an iron, I mean, that's sharp enough that it could leave a wound.
Well, yeah, any of the edges,
especially a wound that bleeds.
Any of the edges of the iron are going to be fairly sharp, and it's a heavy
and it's metal,
heavy blunt.
And
instrument.
I'm sure these antique irons were very heavy, right?
Oh, yeah.
Could probably do some serious damage if it hit you in the back of the head.
Just
Today's irons are metal, but they're also plastic.
I still wouldn't want to be hit by a damn iron.
No.
I mean, you know what today's, let alone one that weighs, 3 or 4 pounds more or something,
Nearly 2 weeks after the murder, Sheriff Quinn and the York police chief, a man named Frank Faulkner, went to the King residence to collect more evidence. They were able to cut blood-stained portions of the kitchen floor and some of the door frames. In a closet, they noticed there was an access point to the attic. Now, Chief Faulkner had one just like this in his house, and he decided to get a chair and climb up and kind of look around in this attic space. Nothing was stored in the attic that he could see, so it hadn't really been searched up until that point. Rafe King said there was nothing in the attic. But as Faulkner shines his flashlight inside the attic, his beam of light caught a glimpse of a trail like in layered dust.
Oh.
So this attic's been empty. There's a big layer of dust, but he sees a trail, like someone has made a trail. Recently, yes. It led along the joists to an eave above the front porch. He walked on the rafters to the area where he finds a bundle of clothing tucked into the eave's framing.
And could you imagine? You'd be like, yes, bingo.
Now, tied up was a man's shirt. It was bundled up. A coat, like a suit jacket, a sports coat. Vest and a pair of trousers, all stained with blood. The coat had the heaviest blood stains on the front and along the cuff, like the sleeve cuffs. The tailor-made suit had RFK sewn into the lining.
Oh, my gosh.
Rafe E. King, RFK. Bingo, right?
Yeah.
There could be no innocent explanation for stashing an expensive, tailor-made suit covered in blood in an otherwise empty attic.
With your name in it.
There's no denying the suit belongs to you, sir.
No, and I was going to say there was they found a little bit of possible blood on the Union suit. I was thinking to myself, if he did what it looks like he did, there's more clothes somewhere covered in blood, because that's not easy to pick someone up after you've attacked them and killed them brutally and move their body all around without getting that on you, especially if there's a significant wound of any type. Blood's going to get everywhere.
With this new information, the men, meaning the sheriff and the police chief, they traveled to Lawrence, South Carolina the following day to discuss with Judge Watts rescinding King's bail. The judge refused to do so, so Rafe King remained free. Now, of course, the story had made headlines captivating the region. Since both King and, Rafe and his wife, Faye, since they both came from prominent families, Faye also was exceptionally pretty. So, she's very printable. Her photo is very printable in newspapers. This murder was salacious. You got a husband killing a wife. I mean, that's big news, right?
Well, yeah, whole community searching for her, and kind of the way this has went down, would stand out as a strange story, I would think, the way Ray's acted and all the things he's done.
So because of all of this, an enterprising man named C.E. McGuckin rented the house once inhabited by the Kings. He rented the murder house, Dylan.
Oh, is he going to do like walkthroughs?
On February 24th, just weeks after the inquest, he opens the house for tours. Yup, he charged 25 cents per person to enter the, quote, murder house. Visitors packed the place, with many stealing souvenirs like doorknobs and chunks of wood from the cutout floors and doors like that were used or being used for evidence.
We've heard this so many times back in the day. People were huge on souvenirs from the crime scene.
Yeah, even society ladies traveled from Gastonia and Clover, South Carolina to view the King murder house. So you've got women traveling from a little bit of a distance.
Is that a piece of the murder house?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Lord and Lady Packer have shown up to view the crime scene.
So there's a herald there?
Dun, dun,
Of
dun,
house.
Well, it's being reported.
Right.
Like Lord Packer
See,
of House Packer has shown up to tour the crime scene.
It shows you what a big deal this, society's fascination with true crime was. People say it's more gruesome than ever, and that's just not true.
It's actually probably a little bit better now.
It's a lot better. I mean, it's a little bit less gruesome because used to they would stand a body up in the corner on display and people would pile through. There'd be a little velvet rope in front of it, and just looking and like taking pieces of the body or anything they can grab out of the coffin.
Like they take an ear or a toe.
I mean, the people are hardcore back then. We've had instances we've talked about before where they took evidence.
That man has a scab. I'm going to take it.
Like I seen this.
Take the scab off that dead man.
I seen this gun down there at that murder house. You reckon they need it? I mean, what are you doing, people?
I'm putting it on display on my mantle.
It's going in the center.
Yeah, this is a centerpiece for Thanksgiving this year. Since there was a lot of local interest in the case, Rafe King's lawyers requested a change of venue away from York County. The judge agreed, allowing for the trial to be held at the recently renovated Chester County Courthouse. The case's prosecutor, Solicitor Glenn, was actually from Chester County, and the state's chief medical witness was Glenn's brother-in-law. So couldn't this be a potential conflict of interest to have the solicitor from this county where he's well known and well liked, and then you have the chief medical witness for the state, for the prosecutor, is his brother-in-law?
I think is the definition of a conflict of interest, actually. If you looked it up, it would have this example.
The trial began on July 1st of 1929, just 5 months after the murder. It was considered the most expensive trial held in Chester County, costing $7,000, which by today's standards is probably more than $100,000.
Oh, wow.
So you got to consider this really small little county back in 1929. I mean, that could have maybe bankrupted the whole county.
Yeah, it really
right?
could. Yeah.
Rafe King had 7 attorneys, including Thomas McDowell from York as his lead. He also had a former North Carolina congressman and a judge from Shelby on his team. He also had 3 more attorneys from Chester, and so he has like 7 attorneys.
How could he?
And another guy from York.
Are these just pro bono offers from the attorneys?
I'm not sure because the King family had.
Oh yeah. I
they
forgot.
had some money, it seemed.
Okay, yeah.
There were 7 attorneys also working for the prosecution for the state as well.
No.
So you've got 14 lawyers ready to do battle at the trial for the murder of Faye King.
What's happening right here?
And when I say they're doing battle, I mean they're going to do a dance battle in the courtroom.
Well,
it's the first of its kind. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I'm wondering why they put a crew together. I mean, what are we doing here, folks? No wonder the damn thing's costing so much. You got like 7 people doing the same job, folks. I mean, I understand having an assistant or 2, or whatever, but it's literally like 7 full-blown attorneys.
During pretrial, it was determined that the evidence, including the bloody clothing found in the bundle, the union suit, Faye's bloody clothing, some of her school books and papers, the bottle of nomopin, and the wood and carpet and the door pieces could all be admitted at trial as evidence. These items were heavily contested by the defense, who wanted to raise the poisoning as cause of death. So they really wanted to keep this evidence out.
Right. They don't want to talk about all the blood all over the house or any. They don't want to talk about blood, period, because they're putting forth she poisoned herself and self-harm.
And they really want to push this narrative of poisoning, despite the fact that the Clemson chemist and toxicology expert, was expected to testify that Faye had not been poisoned.
That there was no
sign of poisoning or no
inside of her.
evidence.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Now, for 10 solid days with no time off for the Independence holiday, this is July, they just go for the straight 10 days. They're even having trial on Saturday and Sunday.
Damn.
The trial, it goes on in Chester, right? Crowds of people tried to get seats, and every day it grew as the trial continued. So, like, every day more and more people are showing up to watch the trial. However, there were some problems with spectators being able to find seats in the courtroom because they had 2 sections of seats that were filled by witnesses who were going to be called. So they had a lot of witnesses for the trial.
Well, why not? You got like 63 attorneys, right? Let's go ahead and have 2,000 witnesses.
Now, the state's case relied on evidence that Rafe King was struggling financially and desperate for money. So this would be the motive. Before Faye's death, Rafe had asked his brother-in-law. Now, you remember Faye had a sister named Blanche. She was married to a guy named W.C. Reagan, and they lived in Charlotte. Well, Rafe had asked his brother-in-law to give him a $3,000 loan against the estate of Faye's mother, which included the farm that he had purchased.
$3,000.
So he's trying to borrow money against the estate.
So given that same rate of inflation, around $40,000 or so, he's asking to borrow.
Now, he had already taken out a $1,000 loan against the property, which needed to be repaid. So he was asking if he could borrow this $3,000 because he needed to pay $2,000 in cash to pay off other debts. He needed $2,000 in cash to pay off some other debts, and he also needed to pay that $1,000 loan back. So he needs $3,000 total. And Reagan refused the second loan. He was like, you haven't even paid back the first loan. I'm not giving you an additional $3,000. That puts me at $4,000. Like, no.
Oh, my gosh.
We're not doing this.
Yeah.
The Reagans also testified that Faye had made remarks that Rafe and his second wife would have a good time on her life insurance money. The jury heard that Faye King had taken out $5,000 in life insurance, which would be worth about $5,000 would be worth about $80,000 today, and that it was payable to her husband, Rafe King. The policy had been taken out 5 months and 10 days before her murder.
God, dude, come on.
Another witness called to the stand said that Rafe King had been in touch with the insurance agent about a week after Faye's death, asking to collect $1,000 of the life insurance money, like ASAP.
I still need that $1,000 he wouldn't give me.
Yeah.
Damn, Rafe. And that's never a good sign when families not even had a chance to mourn or process their loved one's death, that they're already finding out. And I understand sometimes you got bills due. You know, you might have a family with kids left behind. And unfortunately, you do have to face this type of financial thing while you're mourning. But it's not a good look when you're calling days later and trying to find money.
Especially when it's a suspicious death.
Well, yeah, because you would want to know what happened to your loved one too, right? As soon as evidence come forth that maybe she didn't kill herself when it looks like, it's been staged to look that way, you should be concerned unless you're the one who did it.
The defense said Faye King didn't want children, that she was terrified of childbirth, that she had this STD and she was very worried about having children because of that it could cause some kind of problems. And just having children in general, like, scared her to death. She was very anti-child. Someone had planted Rafe's bloody clothing in the attic, though they never suggested who that person might be or why there would be a reason to incriminate Rafe King. So the defense is saying she didn't want kids, she was scared, that's why she took her own life, and that someone just planted these bloody clothes trying to get back at Rafe for something, but we can't tell you what.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? I mean, that's a good defense.
He's got ops.
It says ops, Your Honor.
His attorneys said that Rafe King was always kind and generous with his wife, that Rafe kept an account at a bank in York where the balance was around $150, that Faye had access to the account and was able to make withdrawals without her husband anytime she wanted. So she didn't have to get permission at all to use this money.
She could spend money too. And that.
She can spend her own paycheck. She don't need permission.
She could spend her family's money and her money. Rafe lets her.
Yeah.
He gives her full access.
The defense also dismantled Dr. Burris on the stand as an inexperienced physician when it came to autopsy. And, he had said Faye died from poisoning. So they're kind of tearing him apart like you don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
The key witness for the prosecution then became B.F. Robertson, the chief chemist at Clemson University. Robertson gave a lengthy, detailed testimony. He discussed receiving the stomach and its contents, which were tested for poisons such as nomopin. Poison was not responsible for Faye King's death, according to Robertson. The second autopsy had revealed damages to tissues in Faye's neck and were likely done by a heavy cord. Dr. R.E. Abel, who assisted with the second autopsy, explained the head wound had not fractured the skull or injured the woman's brain, so blunt force trauma was not the cause of death. The ligature wound circling Faye's neck was serious enough to damage skin and muscles. There were also some bruises found on Faye's elbows and knees, and that there had been a substance found under Faye's tongue. Now, Dr. Abel explained if someone swallowed a liquid poison, it would unlikely end up under the tongue, and he implied that the liquid had been poured into Faye's mouth.
Yeah, when
post-mortem.
When it was poured on her lips, even if it wasn't intentionally, it went into her mouth. But at this point, she would be deceased, and her tongue would have relaxed, right? It would have kind of come up. I've never noticed. I used to see this dude on TikTok. He's like, hey, guys, how are you? You make fun of those. But this guy would actually make you feel good. He'd be like, okay, just take a second for yourself. And you let your eyebrows relax, pull the tongue down from the roof of your mouth, and you don't even realize that you're sitting there. You're like, whatever, dude.
Relax your jaw.
Yeah, and you do all those things. You're like, holy cow! I'm like my whole face feels lighter now. But yeah, so it makes total sense. That's how it would end. It shouldn't end up under your tongue.
On cross-examination, the defense tried to find holes in the doctor's testimony. Now, the doctor admitted the broken blood vessels in Faye's neck did not rule out suicide. Yet, in the end, most everyone in the courtroom felt the back and forth did little to prove that Faye had committed suicide.
Okay.
Because if she had done something to strangle herself, like a hanging, there would be evidence of that, right?
She would be found hanging?
Or, yeah.
Or
if she had tied a belt around her neck or something, wouldn't that be present in the smokehouse where her body was found? Like, she didn't kill herself and then get up and walk to the smokehouse.
No.
She didn't drag herself out there.
And outside, yeah. And you've also said that someone planted this bloody clothing and all on Rafe. How's the bloody clothing even a thing to be planted if you are saying that she committed suicide?
Why would she be covered in blood if she committed suicide?
What are you talking about?
When there are no wounds to indicate that.
This is the best these 7 lawyers can do together. It must be like the B team.
Well, one of them was a congressman.
It's
not the best and the brightest, okay? It was a politician. The Charlotte Observer noted after its first few days of trial that more women seemed to be filling the courtroom and that these women were, quote, dressed in gaily colored dresses and were enjoying the trial as entertainment.
Oh, so these are more socialites.
Yeah. Now, another publication, the Yorkville Inquirer, noted how many high school age girls, quote, crushed to be in the courtroom, quote, listening without a blush as the most intimate details of the King's sexual relationship were discussed.
Oh, gosh.
Some newspapers shared opinions that young girls should not be allowed into the courtroom to hear these types of discussions. However, the prosecutor said the girls likely knew more than their elders when it came to these discussions.
Damn. Prosecutor firing back.
So what was shocking about this testimony that these young girls should not hear, Dylan? Rafe King had to admit that he knew he had an STD before marrying Faye and that he had passed the infection on to his wife. He had suggested early in the investigation that Faye had brought the disease into their marriage. He was now saying her despair over bringing the disease into the marriage had caused her to commit suicide. We'd heard him kind of say that before, but now he's having to like kind of clear up and admit, well, yeah, I mean, I was being treated for syphilis for some years before I met her.
Not a very good treatment, it doesn't sound like.
People learned that not only had Rafe been lying about the STD, but that he had blamed his dead wife for it. And people thought that was so wrong. She can't defend herself.
Yeah, it's character assassination,
Yeah,
post-mortem.
exactly.
It's disgusting, and I always recoil when people do it in any of the cases that you bring forth.
After closing arguments, 12 jurors reviewed the case. The first vote came with 8 in favor of first-degree murder, while 4 committed to a second-degree murder charge. Within 30 minutes, 2 more votes were held. The third was a unanimous for a first-degree murder conviction, based on the evidence. On Tuesday, July 9th, a little over a week after the trial began, they only had 2 hours of deliberation, by the way. The jury reached a guilty verdict. King's reaction was one of astonishment. Then, after a period of sort of staring out the window, people described it as sort of being reflective. Like he kind of looked like he was reflecting on what had happened.
Well, you know.
That he smiled, then laughed before leaving the courtroom. On Wednesday, the judge sentenced Rafe King to die by electric chair. Rafe said, quote, "I am ready to die, and I will die an innocent man."
That's a great last quote.
Rafe's lawyers, of course, filed an appeal. An opinion published on in October of 1930 noted it took a long time to file this appeal based on the 946-page trial transcript. The defense made 81 exceptions to what went on during the trial.
81?
Yeah. So facts of the case are decided by the jury, and the appellate court can only deal with issues of laws and whether they were violated, which prevented King from getting a right to a fair trial. But of these 81 exceptions, the appeals court did find enough to grant Rafe King a new trial.
Oh, gosh. Well, see, this whole thing was like kind of like a circus the entire time. You know what I mean? There was no control of the
Well, and again, we have like the
courtroom.
conflict of interest with the prosecutor.
Well, there's that. I mean, that alone is a very big procedural thing that could, certainly lead to mistrial or.
A second trial began in May of 1931. This trial started with the testimony of Reverend Hunter, who discovered a fire had been burning in the fireplace on the day of the murder, and that the kitchen had been cleaned due to water spots on the floor. Robertson, the Clemson University chemist, was brought back to discuss his examination of the stomach and how no sign of poison was found. The defense's new strategy was to cut off questioning witnesses as soon as they got the answers they wanted without digging any further.
Oh, I'm sure that looks really, really professional when someone's like thank you, no, thank you, no, nope, you already said it.
But once again, Rafe King, he doesn't testify at this trial. Now, the judge ruled in every objection by the defense favorably because the judge's attitude was, I'm going to go ahead because I want to make sure this doesn't get another appeal.
Oh, so he's kind of given the defense every chance possible.
Yep. So after a week of trial, the jury returned another guilty verdict, but this time they recommended mercy instead of the death penalty. The defense attorneys had won what they came for. Rafe King's death sentence was thrown out.
Well, I mean, that's a win on the defense side.
Rafe would serve life in prison at the South Carolina Penitentiary in Columbia. He died in 1949 from heart disease.
He died of a broken heart for having been put in jail for something a one-armed man did. And if you don't know out there, that is a reference to The Fugitive. Yeah, he was looking for the one-armed man. But there really was a one-armed man, right? Yeah.
Well, in the Harrison Ford movie version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they never found it in the original?
I don't know. I've never seen the original.
I'm
just saying the Harrison Ford version.
Rafe is a dick. That's what I got from
Rafe's
this.
a bad liar. He's not that bright.
He's kind of dumb. Rafe is stupid, let's be honest. And that poor woman. For what? Because he's just.
And she's only 23. She's young. She had her whole life ahead of her.
Mm-hmm.
had only been, what, like 2 years into the marriage?
With this Duber?
Yeah.
Freaking Duber?
Gets a life insurance policy, and 5 months later, her husband kills her. I mean, what the hell?
I don't know. How'd you stumble upon this? You come up with these great oldies but goodies. And a lot of times I think it's when you're doing research for other stories, if I'm not wrong.
I found a lot of newspaper articles of the time.
Okay.
And yeah, just kind of researching some, I kind of go look for murders in certain states or whatever, and just kind of happened to find this one.
Every time
I don't know.
When it's the old ones, and one of your biggest resources are indeed old newspaper articles, every single time it's like the shortcomings of the press is on display during the story. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Because their need to sensationalize, and to, if it leads, it bleeds, and to kind of just make up stuff to be filler if they need to, or to be more salacious than the others to sell more papers. I mean, it's just, that's been going on for a long, long time.
Well, and I love the way that they have so many euphemisms too.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Like, instead of being like venereal disease or something, it's a social disease.
Ah, yes.
You
The
know,
scourge of diseases.
the social disease of the time. Yeah.
All right, well, thank you for
Also,
that.
syphilis, man. That's a rough one.
Yeah, like long-term
Untreated?
long-term syphilis sounds terrible. It sounds very scary.
Yeah, I mean, people would die, right? Isn't that what Al Capone, didn't he eventually die from syphilis?
I think so, and look what they did to the Tuckasegee Airmen, right?
So
Gave them syphilis on purpose. Is that right?
I don't know a whole lot about syphilis, but apparently, this is what the Google is telling me, that it can take 14 to 21 days for the incubation period.
Oh God!
That you get small, painless open sores or ulcers, canker, which I just think is a horrible word,
Where do you get that?
on
your
genitals,
stuff?
mouth, skin, or rectum. And it often heals by itself within 3 to 6 weeks. You also get like enlarged lymph nodes.
Oh my
in the
God!
area of the sores.
You get blisters on every bad spot on your body. Your genitals, lips, and sphincter. I mean, my God.
The second stage is characterized by a rash. Then there could be no symptoms until the final stage, which could be years and years later. You get damage to the brain, nerves, eyes, or heart.
Damn.
Yeah.
Syphilis is brutal.
Dude, terrible.
Gosh, these kids run around not using condoms.
Yeah. Well, I guess they can treat it with penicillin. But, a lot of times, I mean, especially like back in the day and stuff, I mean, people are afraid to go to they don't want to seek, they're embarrassed, and they don't want to like go seek treatment for certain things.
Well, there's that, and I would get I don't know this for a fact, but I would say there was some people couldn't afford to go to the doctor. You know what I mean?
But there's such a stigma, I think, it prevented a lot of people from going.
Well, and when you're having these issues and you're an open sore on your penis, I mean, that's that's scary and embarrassing and all that at the same time. You know what I mean? Dude, I would freaking die. I would die if I got a canker on my genitals, okay? You know what? I'm glad I'm married. When you're in a closed relationship with someone, and I just don't ever have to
Monogamous relationship, you mean?
Well, whatever, a closed circuit.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of different types of relationships people do out there. But for me personally, I enjoy being with just one person in all the ways, with my heart and soul and my genitals.
Oh.
Yeah, all at
Okay.
once. Yeah. But no, because it's scary. VDs scare me to this day. And I don't know if it's because we were just slammed across the face, all of our youth into preteens, young adults, about how scary STDs are. And they would describe them, right? And then they would start rolling the pictures out.
Now here's
the blue waffle of the day. You know what I'm saying?
no.
Yeah.
Ew.
That shit left a mark on me, bro.
Now, here we got to talk about this, Dylan. In the 1920s, I just found this information. Syphilis was a leading cause of blood and illness, and it was often referred to as a disease of bad blood.
Oh, God.
Before the discovery of penicillin, there was no effective treatment for syphilis, though it could be treated with toxic metals like arsenic. But a course of treatment from a private physician could cost between $300 and $1,000. So as you mentioned, a lot of people couldn't afford the treatment, so they turned to public clinics for help. However, funding for the Public Health Service Venereal Disease Division was cut from $4 million in 1920 to less than $60,000 by 1926.
See?
And some hospitals refused to admit patients with syphilis, considering them to be morally tainted and less deserving of care.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude.
So again, it had a lot of stigma. Well, I knew that because I listened to a podcast about Jack the Ripper, Haley Rubenfeld, I think might be her name, but it's basically about the victims of Jack the Ripper, and she really dives into the moral panic of the time of syphilis in Whitechapel and just in the late 1800s, and there would be like lists, and you could lose your job.
Oh gosh.
You know,
it's like getting canceled by syphilis.
well, like if you were in a workhouse or something, you know, which a lot of the poor had to go to these workhouses and stuff. If it was learned that you had syphilis, you could be fired. I mean, you were basically kind of like blackballed.
So here's a lot of reasons not to publicly come forward and admit you have syphilis and seek treatment.
Yeah. So anyway, not only are you
have,
getting a true crime case, but we're giving you a health lesson in syphilis today.
Watch out.
Who knew?
Watch out for them old
The word canker is so gross.
cankerous genitals
Look,
coming at
when
your
I was
face.
growing up, my family, I mean, people say skank a lot, you know, now, but that was a term that we used quite a bit in my family, like, and skankered, like if something was gross, you'd be like, that's skankered, which is kind of a play on like cankered and skank, I guess, because cankered, that was another thing. You'd be like, ooh, that's cankered, like that was gross. And I remember I'd be like, as a kid, I'd say, that's all canked up.
That's done got canked up.
Yeah. Like if
Aw.
something was gross, like rusty or muddy, you know, anything, that's cankered or that's skankered.
You're crazy.
Okay.
So thanks again to our sponsors of today's show. We love you to death.
Brenda and Karen.
Brenda and Karen.
Thank
and
you.
Thank you to all our other patrons, new and old. And we're actually, there's been times when we might have been a little slow with content on Patreon during the 5+ years we've been doing this. We're well on our way to 500 episodes, and I'm sure we're going to try to do maybe some bonus material, maybe me just saying dumb shit. That'd be a fun episode, right, Heather?
For your 500th episode, it's just Dylan says dumb stuff.
Dude, I'm gonna go
Great.
back and clip a bunch of dumb stuff that I said, and that'll be a great episode.
You mean I'm going to have to go back and do that?
But we have a lot of fun things going on over at Patreon. So, and just a ton, like Heather said before, a ton of extra content. So, yeah, thanks to everyone and all the other listeners as well.
Okay, have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.